We have Dr. Melissa Omino from SIPIT at the University of Strathmore in Nairobi to talk a little bit about a piece of work that they're doing to try and ensure that the doors are not closed, that there is some opportunity to go on doing AI, doing research in Africa, but not necessarily throwing the doors open to everybody to do everything with all our stuff. Tell us a little bit about that.
Well, I really like that introduction. Yes, and that was the thinking behind it. Also, it's interesting that I'm sitting next to Vukosi because Vukosi has a great influence on why the license exists. You've heard him talking about Masakane and the language data that they needed. And in the previous Recreate conference, where we talked about the JW300 dataset, I hope you all know about that. And if you don't know, this is a plug for the Recreate YouTube channel so that you can go and look at that story. That's a Masahane story. And to make sure that we're all together in the room, I'll give you a short synopsis about the JW300 dataset. And of course, you can jump in if I get something wrong. So essentially, Masahane, as a group of African AI developers, were conducting text data mining online for African languages so that they could build AI tools that solve African problems. We've just had a wonderful example right now about the weather in Zulu, things like that. That's what they wanted to cater, the audience wanted to cater for, and the solutions they wanted to create. So they went ahead and found very minimal data sets or data available online for African problem solving, basically in African languages. But they did find one useful resource, which was on the Jehovah's Witness website, where it had a lot of African languages because they had translated the Bible into different African languages. And they were utilizing this in what was called the JW300 dataset. However, they somehow, I don't know how you guys thought about copyright. They thought about copyright after text data mining. They thought, hey, can you actually use this data set? And that's how they approached SIPIT. And the first thing we did was look at the website, and most websites have a copyright notice, and a copyright notice lets you know what you can and can't do with the copyright material that is presented on the website. And the copyright notice on the Jehovah's Witness website specifically excluded text data mining for the data that was there. And we went back to Masahane and said, sorry, you can't use all this great work that you've collected. You can't use it because it belongs to Jehovah's Witness, and Jehovah's Witness is an American company registered in Pennsylvania. And so they asked us, how is it that this is African languages, right? From different parts of Africa. And the copyright belongs to an American company, and we cannot use the language. And I said, well, that's how the law works. And so they abandoned the JW300 dataset. And this created a new avenue of research because Masahane did not give up. They became innovative and decided to collect their own language datasets. And not only is Masahane doing this, Ken Corpus is also doing this by collecting their own language datasets. But where do you get African languages from? People. You go to the people to collect the language, right? If you're lucky, you can find a text that has the language. But not all African languages will have the text. Your first source would be the communities that speak the African languages, right? So you're funded because collecting language is expensive because he can't confirm. You have to go. He's collecting 3,000 languages or 3,000 hours of languages. His budget is crazy to collect that. So you collect the language, you go to the community, record them, however you want to do that. Copyright experts will tell you the minute you make the recording, then you have created a copyright work, and whoever who has made the recording owns the copyright, okay? But what if you're funded? If somebody has funded you to collect the data, what happens? Funding comes with conditions, terms and conditions, as to what you can do with the money that you have been offered to collect the data. And so many of these terms and conditions or funding agreements from various funders, we're not going to call anybody out, requires that the data must be CC0, which is a Creative Commons license. Okay? Basically, it means that whatever you have collected belongs to the public domain. That sounds good at first glance, right?
Yeah.
That means everybody can use it. A yay for open data. But who develops or who has the ability to take that data and develop a tool?
Anyone with capability.
Thank you. Anyone with the
With a lot of
capability
computers.
can do that. And you'll find that there are certain jurisdictions that have more capability than those in Africa. And so what will happen? They'll develop tools faster than those in Africa. They'll market them at a faster rate. And usually when I say marketing, I mean they target big ticket operators such as governments, because governments would have a use for language data tools, right? Or let's think about public service delivery. So it means that African developers are relegated to data collectors and they cannot develop. But at least the developers have some sort of attribution. We know who collected. African AI developers collected. But the communities, what happens to the communities who literally have lent their voices in terms of the language? What happens to them? So that's where the NOODL license comes in.
This is the answer. This is the solution.
It is part of the solution. Part of it, because we have to start somewhere. So the NOODL license, or the Nolite Obodo license, is basically a tiered license framework. Because we're not trying to reinvent the wheel. And we're not trying to say that there's a major problem with open licenses or the Creative Commons licenses. We like the Creative Commons licenses. But we're saying context requires a different type of license or a different type of nuance to be applied when thinking about African language datasets. And if you go to our website, which is licensingafricandatasets.com, you'll find essentially a toolkit that would help you if you're a licensor or if you're a licensee and you're dealing with African language datasets. And there we've started from the very beginning by asking ourselves, what are the pre-licensing guidelines? Because those exist. I've mentioned just one example. If the dataset was collected with funding, then already there's a prescribed copyright regime on it, according to the grant agreement. That's another problem we need to solve, but we might not be able to solve it here. The second thing to think about is who else was involved in this process other than the AI developer? You've mentioned people, that is a community. We also have sometimes linguists are involved. We have what they call language collaborators. I'm not an expert, that's why Vukosi is here, and I'm happy Vukosi is here. To think about what type of license in the tier you can select. We also have the actual license there. The Nolite Obodo license is available there. It has a lot of legalese in it, but we've tried to explain it in the pre-license guideline as to what it does. And essentially, it is tiered in the fact that it depends on who you are, who wants to use the data. So if you are another African AI developer, you can get the data on a Creative Commons 0 license. If you are from a developing country, let's say you're from Brazil, and you want to use the data that is licensed under this regime, then you can use it under Creative Commons license. If you are a multi-million-dollar tech company that wants to use the license, then you need to negotiate with the AI developers who collected the data, and the license also ensures that the community gets a benefit from that negotiation.
So what are the criteria? It's where you are,
Yes.
how much bucks you got, how rich you are,
And also what you're using it
and what you're using it for. So this may be the first license. Is there another one like this? This is like the first sort of into Creative Commons license, because it's Creative Commons for some people,
Yes.
but that is tiered and discriminates. You get it, but you don't get it.
I wouldn't want to say that it discriminates. I think actually it tries to make the playing field fair. So,
Useful public interest.
yes. But also thinking about the public interest in terms of access benefit sharing for the community. Because essentially communities are just seen as sources of data, which is why I get really irritated when people say data is the new oil. Because oil exists in a piece of land and you can go and drill it and you don't have to talk to anybody, maybe other than a government or the landowner. But language is culture, and that's one of the principles that the license is based on. And culture belongs to community. And you can't treat culture as a commodity. You have to really think in a nuanced way about culture. And I think we'll have a deeper discussion on that in Cape Town.
Some of the lawyers in the room, the other lawyers, Melissa's a lawyer, may want to comment on whether you can distinguish, I won't use discriminate, whether you can distinguish between users in the way that you are doing. Can you use geographical determinants to determine? You want to come in on that straight away?
I mean, why can't you? I'd like to hear why you can't. I think there's been a lot of debate around looking at intellectual property as part of the property regime or proprietary assets, thinking about human rights, thinking about the public interest. It's very interesting that people will be proponents of data coming from the least developed world as being free and open. But when we look at what's happening in AI right now, if you look at what China launched recently as DeepSync, and you look at the reaction from the global north, it's really interesting. They're up in arms about their proprietary assets.
Yes, agreed.
But when it comes to this side, we're not meant to be really that aggressive about our proprietary assets. And maybe we shouldn't be. Maybe we should think about it as a different regime. The bottom line, and what this license is trying to say, is that there's community. And that's what Nulite Obodo means. It means developing the community, raising the community, building community. It means that language does not exist in a vacuum. It is not something that is free for use in the air. It is preserved and curated by communities. And if somebody collects it and ends up creating something that has a monetary value at the end of it, then where you obtained it from must have some sort of benefit. And we can decide whether we'll be capitalist about it or we'll use a different method to redress what has been extracted from the community, but that has to be done.
I'm going to call it positive, progressive protectionism of the ability of communities to benefit and Africa to protect its languages, culture, and use.
Yes, and also to understand that this is the way that Africa is taking space within the AI development race. We might not build models because we don't have GPUs and all those things Vukosi knows about that can do that. But we have the data, which is actually quite valuable. And we need to recognize how we can then leverage that data in order for us to be at par with others in the AI race.